Is that drinking, drugs, those are things that are visible addictions. They're resentful, they're lonely, they feel unseen, unappreciated, they're overextending themselves, they're passive aggressive, they have low self-care.
Clearly, I get high on life. I get high on reaching my goals. How quickly I built even this podcast to go up as a #1 podcast in our community with hundreds of thousands of views.
It's not about slowing down. It's realizing that point where you're creating a shadow or a trail of destruction.
If I can't appreciate the things that I have in my life right now, I will never be able to appreciate the things that I wish for.
Because we're living in fear and shame.
Right.
Always tell my husband, he's my lab rat. And,
Yeah, I was walking at the beach yesterday and I heard a mother say to the daughter, "This is the consequence of your bad attitude."
it's mafia mentality.
Wow.
That thing that we have, the moistest controlling us and all that. And me and you are breaking out of system. We're creating change.
Yeah. Do you really think that I want to send my kids to a moistus that has a problem with me talking about growth or mental health or anything like that? Welcome to another episode of Podsitivity. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate everyone that comes to listen in every week on Mondays to the podcast. Today we have the esteemed Mrs. Rachel Lebowitz, and I'm super excited to have her on. I actually met her more than 2 years ago, and we had a quick conversation about businesses and how it works and growth within businesses, and it fascinated my mind because she's an entrepreneur herself, an EOS implementer, and talks a lot about how business and relationships, how they go together. So I'm super excited to sit down with her and have a conversation today. I want to remind you to please like this episode, subscribe to the channel, share the episode. If you want to join the conversations, my WhatsApp link is in the description. Also, Weber Media is currently looking to hire. I never put an ad for Weber Media, but we're currently looking to hire for 3 new positions. Baruch Hashem, our company has grown. It's a social media management company, so preferably if somebody can have experience in that field. We're looking for a content creator, somebody to create cool videos. We're looking for an account manager and an assistant/secretary. So if you feel that you qualify for the job, feel free to reach out to me. So thank you so much for joining today. And I'm curious, people have asked if the guests can do their own introduction because they want to know what the guest does about it. It doesn't have to be about your history, but what are you currently doing before they listen in for the next hour or so? They should know who's talking over here.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure.
And it's really nice how today worked itself out that I was able to make it.
Right.
I want to give a shout out to my husband, Ezra Lebowitz. He's super shy and doesn't like to be in the public eye, but
Yes.
I think it's important. I think we see a lot of women on social platforms these days, which is amazing. We're moving ahead.
Right.
We also see a lot of men, but we don't see couples.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see that unification. We
Right.
don't. And my biggest wish and what I strive to be is a power couple. And I think a power couple is when we both each have our individual voices and
Right.
we both stand on our own feet, but we also stand together. And
Right.
that's super important. And my husband is my backbone. He really encourages me to put myself out there, although that's not his vibe. And he really encourages me to be me. And otherwise I would have not been here, you
Wow.
know? So thank you. And okay, a little bit about me. So what I do now, let's not go to the background stuff. That'll come up when it'll come up.
Yeah.
First of all, we had a very vulnerable conversation the first minute that we met. And there was something that just clicked, which I really appreciate. I look at it as a friendship and I appreciate that. I am currently an EOS implementer, so I help businesses implement the EOS operating system. I know people are tired about hearing about EOS because
Right.
there's so many opinions about it. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that because that was a corridor for me. Mm-hmm. It was a way of passing through and getting through to something much bigger,
Right.
scarier.
Yeah.
And so I want to spend time talking about that because that really ties in who I am, my past, where I'm going, what my vision is, what my mission is, and what I'm trying to create in the world. What I do now is I am currently the co-host for Dr. Doug Brackman, who's the author of the book Driven. He talks about a genetic mutation in 10% of the population that causes us to be driven. I suspect that you have that mutation. I have it. My husband has it. I suspect that the Hampshire population has a very concentrated version of that. If we take the 10% and we distribute it all over the world, a lot of it landed in Williamsburg, Borough Park, and Lakewood, and we can talk about why. It's a survivor gene, and that is the competitiveness and the entrepreneurial spirit that we have. That is a good thing and a bad thing. It's also the genetic mutation that we constantly need dopamine, and that is what causes addiction. It's caused by trauma. We can talk about that. That's really something we should talk about. My book, Empowered COO, is coming out very soon, literally the next 2 weeks. And that is about, I think that we don't talk enough about empowering the second in command, supporting the supporters, I call it. So I am very passionate about coaching COOs. And you told me off camera that your COO disagrees a lot with you, and that's amazing. We need more COOs doing that more assertively. We could talk about that. Teaching COOs communication skills, how to not to be passive or passive aggressive, and to be assertive and to stand up. Because if COOs would understand that their gift is to be logical, detail oriented, and grounded, the visionaries up in the clouds, their big ideas, and that marriage, bridging that, and how much it propels you and moves you ahead, and what's needed to be in that healthy relationship. And that's the exact relationship you need in a marriage. That's the exact relationship that you need all over. So my book is a lot focused on that type of relationship. Having one person as a visionary and entrepreneur, and who they attract, why they attract them, the challenges of why they attract them. And that's really people that support visionaries often fall into codependency. And I got the privilege to be mentored by the founder of Codependence Anonymous, who has his own private consulting. And I'm learning so much. I thought I know a lot, and I'm learning so much more. So that's what I do. I also started a forum called Driven Spouse Forum for spouses of entrepreneurs. And that is because many spouses of entrepreneurs find themselves feeling lonely and unseen because their husbands are visionaries and they are so passionate about what they do. So it's their dopamine, and they get stuck in that world, and they forget that there's a spouse there that isn't as excited as them. And they feel lonely and unseen.
So you're supporting her. What about support for him?
So that's a dynamic that I cannot talk to, meaning there are...
And what are you telling those women? That it's okay, you really are loved, but you're explaining to them that their husband is how he works, or you're explaining to them that it sucks that your husband is this type of person?
So that's a great question. So
are you validating or educating?
Both. So if we understand the DNA of how visionaries and entrepreneurs operate, we can appreciate them for who they are and stop trying to change them. If you go on LinkedIn, there's so many people talking about, oh, this boss is a narcissist. And we use the word narcissist way too callously, and we throw it around. But really what it means is somebody that's self-focused. And what that means is that they're goal-oriented. And what happens is when there's this big shiny goal, I don't know what your goal is in your business, but when you get hyper-focused on that goal, you get tunnel vision. That's all you see. Everything else looks like an obstacle to that goal. So if your wife says, come home, I want you to be home, you suddenly see your wife as an obstacle to your success.
Because I have to record a podcast, I have a meeting, I have to do an interview with a new employee, I have a vlog to shoot or something, and I must be at this event.
Exactly.
So how can I avoid that, or how can I make a promise to my future spouse that as motivated as I am and as focused and goal-driven as I am towards business, that it's still, I still gonna make sure to make you a priority at all times.
I don't work with the entrepreneurs. I do have given this presentation to over 100 entrepreneurs, and every one of them said, oh my goodness, you're writing my life book. I see myself now, which is, and we can talk about this right now.
Well, what if I already have now healthy boundaries, like some of which I mentioned to you, where I know for sure certain times of the day, certain days of the week that I am absolutely don't do any type of business. For example, Sundays.
Right. So there's a difference with being present and being there. Many entrepreneurs, they're there, but their mind isn't there.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the spouses.
Okay.
What happens is most spouses, they hang up their hope on their husband. So if he's going to come home, if he's going to be on time, then I will be happy. What's happening is they become enmeshed and codependent, and they don't have their own self-identity.
Right.
They don't know who they are if they wouldn't be married, if they wouldn't be a mother, if they wouldn't be doing all that.
Right.
So they're already coming from a very needy place.
Right.
And most visionaries who are self-focused are attachment avoidant. So they run away from anybody that's needy. So the more you're calling and being needy, the more they're running away. And then that cycle of running and running after running just keeps repeating itself over and over. And it can go on for multi-generations.
Yeah.
And that's the same cycle that actually happens. So my personal story is, and I think we should talk. The mistake that happens is when somebody has an addict in their life, that person goes to a 12-step program, and there's a sister program for the spouse of or the loved one of the person with the addiction. Mm-hmm. And what often happens is that the spouse comes into the room and says, "This is not my problem. He has the problem."
Okay.
But the problem is that you have to ask yourself, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
What attracted me here?
Ah.
What brought me here?
Wow, that's taking responsibility on the next level.
Yes, and I got the gift of being in that room and knowing that I have nowhere to run. I was just young, didn't make enough money to pay my own rent, didn't have a family or home to run back to.
So you felt codependent.
I knew I was codependent. I just didn't know what it was. But not only that, I had no choice but to change.
Yeah.
Because if you have very accepting parents that sure, come home, we'll find you another spouse, you never get that gift of actually doing the work.
Right.
And I think that's what's happening a lot today in young people divorcing very fast.
Yeah, what's happening? Let's talk about that.
I think that we're creating a coddled generation of the parents are like, "Oh, I feel so sorry for you, come home." Nobody's ever the problem. The other person is always the problem.
Ah, really? You think it's the parents that are calling home their children again?
I don't want to make generalizations.
Right.
I just want to say what I saw in that room was oftentimes women saying, "I have no idea how I got here. This is not me.
Right.
He's the problem." And you spend many years
Absolutely.
pointing fingers at the addict. And really what that is we scapegoat as a community. We scapegoat, by the way, all the people that are OTD or challenged children, we're just scapegoating. We're taking all the bad parts of ourselves and we're putting it onto them and they act it out. So if you have a parent that is tense and doesn't know how to take care of their feelings, their kids will act out the anger.
Wow.
Their kids will act out the addiction. And then that person marries somebody that's a codependent because then it's a perfect recipe to let this person be unhealthy until somebody comes and says it stops here.
Wow.
So then I sit in these rooms and I look at spouses of addicts and I'm like, okay, they're all codependent. But then I look at all the people that I know in my life, successful entrepreneurs, the world looks at them successful. They spend a lot of money, let's just say that. And they are all like my husband, but without the chips.
Wow.
They never walked into a casino, but they've been gambling Amazon businesses, buildings.
Right.
It's all about the high. They don't enjoy the moment. They're always like, it's always what's next, what's next, what's
Well,
next.
if you look a little bit what's doing in shul alone with the alcohol drinking, and we're drinking as if it's l'chaim, to life, and whatever, but every tiny drop of alcohol is damaging to the body on a next level.
People understand very quickly.
So I think so many people have a drinking problem, but don't even call it a drinking problem. They're just drinking schnapps every morning, and l'chaim, you know, it's going to be
Yeah, but the problem with that is that drinking, drugs, those are things that are visible addictions, okay? Gambling is when I would tell somebody that's playing with crypto or with stocks that they have addiction. No, it's a normalized. Every 19-year-old wants to own a business before working for anybody. Okay?
Yeah.
Any 25-year-old has lost a ton of money and tried to make it back and is borrowing without a cheshbon.
Right.
And that is a glorified, normalized addiction.
Wow.
So I'm sitting there and I'm seeing all these spouses act the same like the spouses in the room, but they don't have a 12-step program.
Right.
Then I go and I become an EOS implementer. And I see all these COOs who are serving visionaries, okay, acting out the same way.
Right.
They're resentful, they're lonely, they feel unseen, unappreciated, they're overextending themselves, they're passive aggressive, they have low self-care, all these things. And I asked myself, what's the similarities? And once I dug and did the research and met Dr. Doug Brackman and his work of the D2D4 gene, the alias, that's the mutation of the brain constantly needing more dopamine, it doesn't matter anymore what addiction it is, if it's alcohol, drugs, or work. The problem is our culture, especially our culture, celebrates the addiction of reaching that crazy goal.
And what should we be doing? Because I can tell you for myself, clearly, I get high on life. I get high on reaching my goals. And the audience here that knows me knows how quickly I built a very, very successful business. How quickly I built even this podcast to go up as a #1 podcast in our community with hundreds of thousands of views. My vlogs even that I create, that took off like crazy, also with hundreds of thousands of views. My WhatsApp status, where I have conversations and people can advertise, and there's just an amazing network over there. And I know right now that I'm going to be craving and digging the next big successful thing. So how do I know if I'm in this addiction, or what's the other way around? Am I supposed to appreciate what I have? Am I supposed to slow down? Am I supposed to create a goal, a vision? What's the way to conquer this properly?
So it's not about slowing down, okay? Most
Okay.
people think that if they're going to get healthy, they're going to slow down. It's not about slowing down. It's realizing that point where you're creating a shadow or a trail of destruction.
Okay, how do I see if I have a
So-
shadow of destruction now?
So depends if you're in a relationship, and I want to go back to the spouses. I was that spouse where the goalpost was always moving. And imagine when you're married to somebody and it's like, we're going to buy the house when we make X amount. And then when it never gets there, it always moves.
Right.
And that spouse is like, but I thought we were going to have the house, but I thought I could buy the clothing, but I thought I could have this. So what happens is our goals are not aligned. We're not on the same page.
Wow. Can I say something? I noticed for myself, and I did a post on this actually on my social media yesterday, LinkedIn and Instagram. I said, if I can't appreciate the things that I have in my life right now, I will never be able to appreciate the things that I wish for.
100%.
And that's where I wrote, imagine if I tell you I'll give you everything in the world. I'll give you the best relationship. I'll give you the best, nicest, biggest house and the most money possible, the best health, the most nachas. I'll give you everything that you can imagine. I'll take away from you one thing. You won't be able to appreciate. You'll say all these things are worthless.
And
What should
that's
I do?
what, by the way, addiction is. Because we're living in fear and shame.
Right. So I said, if you can appreciate the things that you have in the moment, that's when you start living. And I think that also ties in with what you're saying, because you're right. The chase is endless. You're chasing for success, it's endless. My way of dealing with it is enjoying today for everything that I have. And that means even though for the fact that I'm single, or even though for the fact that I still might not have the business exactly where I want it to be, or the amount of money that I want, or I don't own the amount of houses that I want, but I am grateful for what I have today. Because if I can promise to God that I can be grateful for today, what I have right now, then He knows and trusts me that I'll be grateful when He gives me all the other things that I want or that is right for me. So that's how I conquer this.
Yeah, gratitude is super important. But it's also...
And it's the realization of the things that I have.
Yeah.
That also.
But it's also understanding your story. Understanding what drives you. Gino Wickman, the founder of EOS, told me, he said something. He said, somebody hurt you when you were 7 years old, and you're still trying to prove them wrong or right.
Yep. I agree. That rings truth. I was by a simcha last week, and there was a chubby child over there, and his father didn't realize, he didn't notice, but he tried to make a point about his son, and he was like, so how's the day, grabber dart, and his son was everybody looked, and his son was blushing. I wanted to go over to that child, and I wanted to tell him, when I was a child, I was twice your size. I was also a very big grabber. And today, I am the most successful kid in my class. And I earn the most money, and I'm the most happy, and at least that's how I see myself. I'm not here to compare. But it rings truth. And that's also where I accept my entire childhood and everything that ever happened to me. Because I came to notice that everything that happened, I'm not a victim of it.
Right.
It's just the opposite. I'm the success. I told my own parents, I said, everything that I have today is because of you. I owe you everything because I either learned from you what yes to do or I learned what not to do.
Absolutely.
So thank you. So I think it's super important for everybody to own their childhood, to own their upbringing and their life, because it's going to make you who you are. And I agree with what you said. Clearly, I am proving a point for my inner child, and I recently deeply connected with my inner child and learned how to listen to him, how to be one with him. My friend Moshe Jung said, he was here on the podcast also, he said that in his opinion, our mission in life is to have an adult that takes care of our inner child for the rest of our life.
We have to be our own parent.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people don't, unfortunately, understand that yet.
Right. I think the psychology comes from something called transactional analysis, and it talks about the 3 ego states. The founder of Coda, Ken Richardson, added a 4th ego state, the higher power. Mm-hmm. And I connect very much with that because as a spiritual person, we also have a higher power. And in my darkest moments, I was able to tap into my higher power.
Wow.
And when I was in my hardest points, and I remember being like, not having a penny, not knowing how I'm going to wake up the next day, saying, Hashem, look at me. Like, I'm here for a reason. Wow. But most business owners don't tap into that. And it's and the same thing for spouses, okay? You can serve your husband, COOs, you can serve the visionary. It's all about the intention. Mm-hmm. Am I losing myself? Am I going to be resentful? It's all about intention. And I work with so many visionaries and leadership teams. And when I talk about their mission statement, and the idea of talking about a mission statement is because life gets boring and redundant at one point, and you can only be excited about being a social media manager for that long, right? At one point, you have to give your team a greater reason of why we're doing it. Yeah. And
that's why I make team meetings, and I tell them that they can move up their position, they can do more, they can, make them, like you said, feel more than that.
Right, but why your company? What are we doing when we give that? Mm-hmm. What's an accountant doing when he gives you a good tax return, when it doesn't have mistakes, when it's not a heartache? Yeah. He's not giving you a tax return. He's giving you peace of life, right? And it comes back to what are you trying to fix within yourself? Right. So my healthy clients, I walk into the room, it's like the second day, and we talk about mission statement. I just go straight to it. And I'm like, okay, who hurt you when you were 7? And we all laugh. And they have stories. Right. They either grew up poor or somebody shamed them. It's usually around fear and shame. It's always around fear and shame.
So let's talk about that, because it's no secret you are Hasidish. And I think that by us Hasidim, there is tremendous amount of shame.
Yes.
My recent podcast with Fali Klein, which got thousands and thousands of views, the title of the podcast was Let Go of Your Shame. And that's probably why it went viral. Because we started noticing that there's shame in every area of life for us. We don't talk about anything. we don't talk about, obviously, intimacy. We don't talk about that you're good enough. We don't talk about, there's so many topics that we don't talk about and we just get shushed, you know, like, so why do you think that is? Why do we carry so much shame?
Sure. So, in order to explain that, I'm going to explain a little bit the psychology of this relationship, okay, of a visionary and whoever they attract.
But this has anything to
And
do
this
with a
has
relationship?
totally to do with relationships.
What about a single person that has shame?
You're going to understand how you became you, okay?
Oh, okay.
So, first of all,
It seems like you see everything in relationships.
yes. My mission statement.
Relationship with self too?
Yes, but my relationship is about bridging gaps.
Your mission statement is?
Yes.
Yes.
Is bridging gaps in visionary relationships. I am so fascinated. I always tell my husband, he's my lab rat. And I observe the world and I put things together.
Wow.
And so those people, actually, Dr. Doug wrote the foreword for my book.
Oh, wow.
And he writes that he could have called driven the shame-based personality type.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And that goes back to that shame. What happens when a mother yells at a child and says, "You're so stupid, you should have thought about not putting this down here"?
I was walking at the beach yesterday and I heard a mother say to the daughter, "This is the consequence of your bad attitude."
What is really happening?
So what's happening?
She has shame, okay?
Right.
And she's expulging it onto her child. She's deflecting it. Instead of owning her shame and saying, what is she shamed about? She's shamed about not being able to control her child, not being able to parent properly.
Embarrassment from others.
Embarrassment from others. Instead of saying that, she puts it onto the child.
Right.
And we've been doing this for generations and generations. Go back to David HaMelech, right? Dr. Doug asked me, is scapegoating a Yiddish thing? And I said, it's absolutely the opposite, but we're doing it as a community. We all scapegoat the person that left, the person that's more modern. We look at them, we tell them that they're crazy, and really it's our shame
Right.
that we're putting onto them. So what happens to that little 7-year-old? Somebody told, and you know what? I look at pictures now and I realize I wasn't even that fat. I don't know how long ago you looked at childhood pictures from yourself. Mm-hmm. I was told I was fat by everybody, so I assumed I was fat.
Absolutely. Same here.
And I wasn't even that fat. No. And we take that shame and we say, I'm never going to let that happen again to me. Mm-hmm. Okay? So this is where two things can happen. Either you become aggressive, and that is the side of the spectrum that I call self-focused. You become goal-oriented. You go into fight or flight. Mm-hmm. I'm going to fight. I'm going to show them. I'm going to run away. And that's where drugs, alcohol, gambling, addiction work.
Most people, I think, today live in flight. They're on their phones.
You
they're
see
escaping.
these people.
You
see
I
flight.
think by us Hasidim, it's flight.
So I'll tell
There's
you.
no fight. Who wants to put up a fight against our system?
So
There's only flight. Let me fly. Let me use my phone all day long. Shabbos, I'll just drink alcohol so I don't have to feel anything. I'll drink and sleep. This is called flight.
Fight are people that are the aggressive people in Shield that are aggressive and fight. There are people that still.
I thought fight like put up a fight against the situation, but
no,
not
they'll
really.
fight it to a certain. Those are the rebellious kids, the ones that leave the fold. They're in fight or flight. It kind of goes together.
Right.
Okay, and you see a lot. And I think more males are in fight and flight, and the other side is the person that is the other focused, which means that their identity is based on what the world tells them they are.
Do you think women are more are freeze?
It's freeze and fawn.
Freeze and fawn, yeah.
Freeze is that, most women have to be perfect. They have to look perfect. They have
so
to be the perfect
you're saying
mother.
Women take the freeze and fawn?
Mostly.
Wow.
So freeze is looking perfect, showing up perfect, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, obsessive thinking. Fawn is, I'm going to make you like me so you're not going to hurt me.
Wow. People pleasing.
People pleasing. And I think most women in our community fell into the people pleasing.
From where? Because their parents were probably so avoidant and didn't know how to talk to them.
Yes.
So they either froze or they fawned. They were here to please them.
Yes, and it's part of the culture of we were told that you have
we're
to
like
be nice, you can't be loud.
Right.
You know
can't
what?
express
I never
yourself. You
understood
can't
not
show
being
yourself.
loud.
Right.
Miriam Hanavi was loud. Esther Hamalka was loud.
Right.
And you know what? My grandmother, and people know my grandmother, she was what people knew as Mechelta, and she had a store in Williamsburg.
Wow.
And she was loud.
Yep.
But for some reason, 70 years ago, being loud was like everybody was scared of her. But today, if you're loud, oh, we put shame onto you.
Right.
Where's that shame coming from?
Right. We have one Hasidic woman that's a judge or something.
Ruchi Fryer.
Right. And
she gets
so
both.
much, there was so much like, wow, like so you're right with what you're saying. I didn't
Because
even
we're
notice
hiding
that. Me
behind
as a
it.
man, it's a lot easier for me to go out there but if any girl would do what I'm doing, I don't think it would land right. I really don't
had to think about the consequences of coming here today.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like if it's going to affect my kids, their chayde. When a guy gets on the podcast, he doesn't have to think about these things.
Right.
And I had to be very strong with myself and look myself in the mirror and say, I'm not going backwards.
Right.
I'm not going into that system anymore. You know what that system is? It is it's mafia mentality.
Wow.
That thing that we have, the moistus controlling us and all that, it's and me and you are breaking out of the system, we're creating change.
Yeah.
And there's no going back.
Absolutely.
My kids, I don't put my self-worth based on what my kid is.
Yeah, my brother told me, he was like, yeah, what's the worst that can happen with your podcast if you go too much out there? That your kids won't be accepted in the moistus? I said, do you really think that I want to send my kids to a moistus that has a problem with me talking about growth or mental health or anything like that?
Right, but then you also have to think about the consequences of your kids watching this 10 years later. And how are they going to feel if you divulge too much information? I think that they will have the best
parents ever.
No, but I'm talking if you get to... People think vulnerability is sharing their whole life story. If you put out too much information, it's not fair to the people that
right, to a certain
privacy.
age. But once my kids turn 12 or 13, I would love for them to listen to this. You know why? Because the 12 and 13-year-olds come to my podcast to see what does vulnerability look like, because they never got it from their own parents.
But I think that we're overcorrecting in the form of vulnerability. There's healthy vulnerability, which is boundaries, a part of codependency, yes, that people give too much information too soon. You know these people at the first meeting, the first time you meet them, they tell you their whole childhood story?
Yeah.
It's unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's they don't have boundaries. They don't know where they start and where they end.
Right.
And people that think that they have to take care too much of other people.
Right.
So codependency looks different. It could look where you become a control freak. So I know you spoke with Fali a little bit about spouses that try to control, and that's codependency, because think about that wife of an alcoholic, and she's hiding the alcohol and she's hiding everything because I know what's best for you. Really, she is so terrified.
Right.
And she can't stand one more time a drunk husband coming home. So she will try to make all the pieces work.
Right.
And then she'll sit down and she says, I scared myself and it didn't happen and now I'm safe.
Right. Wow. So you're saying that men are living in fight or flight, women are living very much in freeze or fawn. And my question to you is,
I will not take that. Let's not do that general.
Yeah,
It's
a little bit like
women
that
are very aggressive, that have self-focused narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah.
Okay. So what people don't understand about narcissism is that narcissism is a form of codependency.
Wow.
I get my self-worth by everybody telling me how great I am,
right,
and by exploiting people, manipulating people, and that's why I like to quote self-focusedness.
Yeah. What's on the opposite side of fight, flight, freeze, fawn? What's on the opposite side of that?
Okay. So that's empowerment.
Okay.
That's not in the opposite, it's in the middle.
Okay.
So this continuum it's passive-aggressive on this side and passive-aggressive and aggressive on this side, and then passive-aggressive and passive on this side. In the middle, most people that you and I know are passive aggressive. That means they don't tell you what they want to say, but they tell you what they want to say without saying
They
it.
call it toxic positivity, right? Baruch
Yeah,
Hashem.
yeah.
Is veel staan, Baruch Hashem. Is gitzig, Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, and it's like, of course.
Yeah.
Or like,
Right.
I told you so.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Nobody's going to do it. I'm going to do it. And you see it all over their face. Right?
Right.
And what that really is anger.
Yeah.
And we live in that world. And teachers do it, and kids do it, and
100%.
parents do it. And that's, so if you lean to the very aggressive side, you're on that side. If you lean to the passive side, you know, there's people that they never say what they want, and then they just brewing inside, and they just look with their eyes, and you're scared, right? That's passive, and it's they're just eating themselves up inside, and they explode, right?
Wow.
In the middle is empowerment, and empowerment is being assertive. Assertive is a talent and a skill of itself, and this is what I am teaching COOs, because visionaries are big personalities. How do you go up against that, right? You can either go and be like, you don't know what you're talking about, so now you're not the boss anymore, you feel stupid, and I took over, yay, I'm managing your business. Or I could say, you know, Ellie, that sounds like a great idea. From where I stand, I'm having a hard time understanding. Tell me more. Or what I see is that if I have to implement that in the next 2 months, I don't know how it's going to roll out, or this is going to fall apart. It's leaving space for the other person's opinion, your opinion, and then doing what's best for the situation.
Right.
Not for you or me.
Do you think I'm gonna run my house like a CEO?
Most probably.
My marriage too?
Most probably.
What does a marriage like a CEO look like? Can you give me the benefits and the downsides of it?
I don't think there are any downsides. Every
what are the benefits?
relationship has one person that drives the bus.
Right. So what can the benefits of my relationship look like because of being a CEO?
You're going to give security, stability. You're going to be a voice, like a grounded voice in a way of like, hey, this is where we're going. You're going to bring the excitement in the relationship. Maybe you're going to marry somebody that's just as much like, so in this concept called relationship math, there is something called the human magnet syndrome. Mm-hmm. And that means, why is it that certain people, they stay married and like the whole town knows that it's not working, but they're staying married?
Right. Okay.
That's because they're equally sick on the opposite side of the spectrum.
Wow.
You know, 180 degrees from sick is still sick.
Wow.
Right? And I say that in our community, a lot of people are walking around and they're saying, I'm not going to be like my father. I'm not going to be like my mother. They're the exact opposite. Maybe a longer shaitel, shorter skirt.
Right.
They're the exact opposite.
Right.
It's still sick.
Right.
So
wow, that's such a good point. That's such a nice way to look at it. So what does that teach me again?
Being in the center of being able to see other people while prioritizing. You're like the lighthouse. You're showing the way. You have the vision. Not everybody has the gift of vision.
Right.
My husband took the kids to the dentist today, and my son didn't want to stand still for the x-ray. And my husband did something that I would have never thought of. He said, you know how you breathe underwater? If you want to be a good swimmer, you have to hold your nose long?
Yeah.
Do that. And my son was able to do the x-ray. I would have been like, stand still. I don't get it. Why can't you stand straight? I don't have that creativity to go outside and bring something totally unrelated and to convince people and to charm them to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
That's visionary talent. You can't buy that. You can't create that. You're born with it.
Right. So what to the person listening to this and saying, I'm not a CEO, and you very much praise CEO and CEO types within a marriage, what happens if the guy is the opposite of CEO? He's the job type of guy. What happens to him in his relationship? Can he still be the CEO in his relationship?
Yes. So every marriage has one person, I believe so, and what I've seen, every marriage has one person that's self-focused, so they're the goal-oriented person. They set the way, and the other person is the follower. You're not a leader without a follower. You can't be a leader.
So can the wife be the CEO?
I just want to go back and say it's all degrees at that. end of the spectrum is the flaming visionaries we know. And if you're going to look at these marriages, oftentimes they're married to highly codependent people. And the job for these people is to come more to the center, which is I see you, I respect who you are, I'm here to support you while I take care of myself. And both people, that's a healthy relationship. I don't need you to be my savior. I'm not saving you.
Right.
We're very busy saving each other in relationships, you know?
Right.
And you know what that is? That's whatever you didn't get. Like, if you didn't get to be a healthy child, you will marry somebody that acts like an adult child, and you will constantly have to save them in their child. Yeah. If you didn't get boundaries, you'll marry somebody that's very authoritative in boundaries.
I'm thinking now that kids that play house when they're young is probably the best kind of relationship, the best kind of house.
Meaning?
They have no insecurities. Like, I'm here listening to everything you're saying, and I'm like, how do we control all delete on everything that we were taught? Because you make a very good point that I never really thought about. I knew about following wrongly, I knew about doing the wrong things, but I didn't know about going the opposite way of that. Like, okay, I'm gonna keep you completely safe because I never felt safe, and that's wrong.
Right.
So it's beautiful how you're saying to keep it in the middle, centered. Yeah,
and you know what it is? We've been, I think the generation before us has been totally not in touch with their feelings, right?
Yeah, well, we're in a technically, we're coming off a terrible time of history.
But we're also overcorrecting. Everybody is so in their feelings. Mm-hmm. You know, the feeling is nothing and everything. You can change the feeling in a minute.
Right.
Put on music, your feeling is gone, but it's everything. Mm-hmm. It is what makes us who we are. And if we can take control of our feelings and know what we feel, and also let people experience their feelings. Right. A child is angry, say it's okay to be angry.
Yeah,
you just can't break the wall. And that's a boundary.
Yep, I absolutely agree with that. I have a 7-year-old brother at home, and I see it every time he'll cry or throw a fit. Not every time, but many times somebody in the house will tell him, be quiet, stop whining, act normal. What does act normal mean?
I don't know.
Like, let him cry, he's 7. Let him give out everything that he's feeling. He wants the blues, he wants to
It's just making everybody around him feel uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Because they don't get to experience their feelings.
Exactly.
If an adult wants to say that they're angry, it scares everybody.
Right.
Because how have we seen adults express their anger?
Right.
Violently?
Right, and I understand why people don't express their feelings, because an average person that will express their feelings today to a friend or to a spouse, the reaction will be, what do you mean you're feeling that, Like, you tell somebody, I'm feeling very sad today. Oh, I'm so sorry, yeah, cheer up.
Because we're trying to fix, solve, and save people.
Right.
Yeah, we're trying to fix, solve, and save. Yeah. And that happens in a marriage too. And that happens I talk to COOs all the time, and they're caught in a very difficult place, especially now with where we're doing economically. There are a lot of businesses that are not doing well, okay? And the visionary doesn't want to see that. They want to live in that fantasy that if only I'm going to invest more money and I'm going to do more, and that's the gambler mentality, okay, then everything will be fine. The COO is more the realistic one, and they come to the visionary with the numbers, and they're like, look, it's not working. Yeah. You know what this visionary does? They get upset at the COO. Because you're bringing that into my vision, and I don't want to see that, right? But then the COO is caught in this space. Okay, if I tell him now, he's mad at me. If I don't tell him and everything goes down, he's going to blame me also. He's going to say, why didn't you say that? Right. Why didn't you tell me?
So you make order within a company?
Yeah, but basically what I do is I help that COO reparent the visionary and say, look, I am here for you, and I want what's best for you and your company, and I deeply care about you. And that's why I want to show you this issue. Now you have a choice. What happens is every visionary, every entrepreneur, every founder of an organization became a business owner for a reason. And if anybody can remember these two top reasons, and if you're in a marriage with a person that is, has a strong personality, this goes for the same.
Okay.
The DNA of a visionary, of a driven person is that they will always, their motive is freedom and winning.
Wow.
Nobody tell me what to do. That's why we rebelled against the school system.
Absolutely.
That's why right? And I want to win. I want to win. And the next one, and the next one. So if you come and you show me facts that don't agree with my freedom or winning, you're telling me I have to show up a certain way. You're telling me I can't invest. Can't, it's the scariest word for a business owner, right?
Yeah.
Then you're becoming the enemy instead of the situation. And what I teach spouses and what I teach COOs is how do we turn the conversation where we show them what the greater win is? What's the win that they're not seeing?
You're right.
So if you don't hire right now, the win is that we get to survive and then we're going to do better.
Yeah.
Or it's about setting a boundary. A COO could say, look, this is your business, and at the end of the day,
Right.
you can do whatever you want. So I'm giving
Absolutely.
you freedom,
You know,
right?
Right.
But I want to tell you, if this is going to come back to bite us, I won't take responsibility for it.
Right.
Too many COOs are taking responsibility for things that they don't need to. It's not in their role.
Right.
It's the boundary. Where do I start and where do I end?
Right. And I feel like this is where help comes in. I can say for certain, like everything that I do, I have, I think about 3 or 4 coaches now. I have a therapist and I have a business coach, and I have, I have a life coach. And they really help me to decide and see what's right, what's wrong, when it's my thinking pattern that gets in the way. Because I truly feel like I'm on a journey. I'm on a big, deep journey, and I don't want to get lost within my own self and start making all those mistakes. My message to people is reach out, have a mentor, have somebody to help you. I tried going in business with it, without it, and then I had to go back to going with it. My next question to you is, you do EOS, which is putting systems into place. In my business, from my entrepreneurial standpoint, I felt like I can't implement it. Like it's just not gonna work. And the reason is because I'm building my own EOS system. I'm building my own team. I'm stacking the employees one on top of another. I'm creating what's happening in the business. I'm creating the system for new clients that we take in. I'm even going to be I'm like hiring now a secretary that's going to systemize everything, meaning put it into a system, which I actually need your advice which system I should use. Mm-hmm. But my question is, do you think that I'm doing it? Do you think that it's right what I'm doing? That I'm doing my own system within my business, or does it have to go, or would EOS be helpful for me, or can EOS work for everybody? You understand where I'm going?
Yeah, I understand where you're going, and I just want to go back to a point like my husband and I spend on therapists and coaching as much as a down payment on a house every year.
Wow.
And when I see people having nice cars and nice jewelry, sometimes I get jealous, and then I know that I've put my money in a really good place that isn't visible. Right. We live in a world where everything is for show. Right. And what I know that I've spent it in a place where we don't see it. And I give you a lot of credit for that at such a young age, seeing the value and not having all the answers and being able to go outside of yourself and saying, okay, who can help me? And that is kind of the answer to EOS too. As long as it's working for you, then it's working. Don't change it if it's not broken. And we don't give you a system that you have to fit yourself into that box. I think a lot of business owners are scared of EOS because they think they're going to get controlled, going back to freedom and winning. But when I show you how having a system will create more freedom for you, because you're not going to have to shut fires and be there for little nitty-gritty things. Like if your value is $1,000 an hour, and if you're getting called into $15 an hour work,
right,
it's chabal.
I love that, because I was telling when I started looking for a secretary now, or an assistant, my COO, she was like pushing back. She was like, what do you mean? I got this. I said, look, I know you got this, but everything that's not $100 an hour worthy, you shouldn't be doing.
Right. And a lot of CEOs get stuck in
Yeah.
that they believe their value is what they are doing
Right.
and not their management skills, their mentor skills.
I feel extremely time conscious. Like everything that I do has to be, is it worth my time right now or not? Because I do so many things within my day, so it has to be. And then again, I put a tremendous amount of time for my own self, because that's where that's the recharging point.
100%.
There's no giving, there's no doing anything if I don't recharge for myself.
So going back to what happens in businesses sometimes is the visionary is fine, the business owner is fine, but then there's infighting lower down. So you have 12, 15 employees, people start stepping on each other's toes because I thought you're going to do it. No, I thought it's your job.
And that happens when it's remote also?
Yes, that could happen. When you see things falling through the cracks, things are not getting done, that's because there isn't clarity in your business about whose job is what. I like to call it who's who in the zoo.
Right.
Whose job is what?
So how can I? It's a good one. How can I be certain that no matter how big my company grows, because I know that, my next goal is Mirza Shem now, 100 clients and 25 employees, and we're not so far from there. So my question is, how can I make sure that I don't get distracted, that I still enjoy my life, I would say at least as much as I'm enjoying it now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Not that I feel overwhelmed. Like, I have 100 clients, I have 25 employees. I want it to be like, what do you mean? No, I have 100 clients, I have 25 employees. It's beautiful, it's fine.
So there's two parts. First of all I always tell business owners who holds you accountable. Because a business owner, they can decide and say, I want to make it to 100 million.
So within the company or a coach or something?
Both.
Okay.
You have to have people that are not afraid to hold you accountable.
Right. Okay, I guess I have a coach and I have a COO that does great work. Okay.
Yes.
What's the other
Because
thing?
what happens is a visionary can make a goal and then go to sleep and not tell anybody, and then they wake up and then they have a bad day and then they don't reach the goal. And what happens is most people, they have this vision and they never reach it.
Right.
And that's that, and it throws them into that addictive mentality of constantly running. The second question that I have for you and to all the people that are business owners chasing goals is, I think most people are afraid of everything going well.
Wow. I had that for a while, by the way. I can so relate to that.
Who am I if I'm not shutting fires? Who am I if I don't get to be the hero?
That's crazy. That's crazy. Thank you for saying that. I noticed for myself that for a while, I had a blockage from joy. And anything that can bring me joy, my body will reject because it would go to the familiar stress or familiar anxiety or fear.
Right.
Just not to have to feel an unfamiliar feeling of joy, happiness, excitement, growth. Like even with my career, do you know for how long I was resenting my own career? I was like, I hate this. I don't enjoy this. I'm too famous. I'm too popular. Everybody knows me and everybody tells me hi and whatever. And then I said, what do you mean? Embrace it. Enjoy the moment, Ellie. You want this. You love this. Enjoy it.
And pile on to that a father of kids and with a wife.
Yeah.
If they don't have a good relationship, if they don't know how to be in a relationship, if they don't know how to show up as a father, they're going to constantly be running. Because if everything is going well, I have to come home. Otherwise, what's my excuse for not showing up at home?
Right.
And then when you show up at home, how do I... You know what the biggest challenge of business owners are? Is that the things that makes them heroes at work are their biggest deficits at home. Which is, at work they're great at fixing, solving, and saving, right? Mm-hmm. So you come home and your wife is preparing a beautiful meal and she has the laundry done, and then something happens and she says, I'm so exhausted, I had such a hard day. And you go into fix, solve, and save mode.
Oh, man.
And you're like, what do you mean? You could have sent this child there and you could have done that and you didn't have to do that. And who asked you to make 5-course meal? You only had to make 3.
Yeah.
All she wanted was for you to hear her and say, I see you.
That's sick.
Because she's feeling so unseen because you're living this high life.
Yeah.
She's in the shadow and she doesn't need to be where you are.
Right.
Not everybody needs to be where I am. I am loud. I was always loud. I always had a voice and I will always, that's who I am. Right. But I acknowledge there are tons of women out there that don't want to sit here. Right. But they want recognition from the people that mean the most to them. They want their husbands to come home and say, this house looks like you worked hard.
Wow.
Oh, that's all they want.
I was speaking to Chassida Shagarish, and she told me she used to make 5-course dinners for her husband. And her husband would come home and say, I'm doing dinner tonight, I'm making dinner. Because he had to feel in control with that aspect. So he never was able to appreciate what she did. My last question, I think we're now
We've got
in,
another
right?
5 minutes.
Yeah. So
And take that, by the way, take that to the next level. The spouses that are like, so why did you make the steak like this? You could have made it like this.
Oh my God.
But you know what the answer is? And this is what I teach women. It's not that they're being critical.
Yeah.
They have a moving goal. No.
Oh, okay.
They have a moving goalpost. They can't enjoy the present. They always want what's better.
Yeah.
What if this steak would have been 4 inches and not 2? It's
Right.
not that they don't enjoy the 2. They're always thinking that's that gambler mentality.
Right.
What's more? What's more? What's coming next?
Absolutely.
Right? So Pesach, by the way, Matzah Pesach, the first week after Pesach, I had to deal with so many of my clients that got so much from their business owners because these business owners didn't know how to enjoy Yom Tov and just be.
Right.
So the minute Matzah Yom Tov came, they created chaos in their businesses. Everything was going fine. Suddenly the COO is becoming like, why isn't this done? Why didn't we start this project?
Oh my God.
Yeah?
I think maybe I'll come to you before I get engaged and for a session, right? Because therapy begins early on. But I'll be like, I'll come with the girl that I want to marry and I'll be like, okay, so what's happening? A question that I have for you is, I'm very curious to hear from you, being that you're successful and you had, your business journeys, your original story with your husband bought a company and got it from 30 employees to 100 employees and was very successful. I'm curious to hear from you, people listening to this and they're thinking, wow, here we have a successful woman, here we have, we're talking about CEOs and about success, and they say, hold on, I also want to reach that kind of success. I want to get out of where I am and reach success. So what does reaching success mean?
So the question really to ask is, what is success? What is success? Because what the world says success is and what you think success is and what we want to think success is very different. And we're all caught up in that narcissistic fantasy of that moving goalpost, right?
Yeah.
And you see me sitting here and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm successful. I don't think I'm successful.
No.
I think like I'm showing up right now in the messy middle. Like it's really painful some days when I wake up and I have all this work to do in this self-awareness, right? What success is, I think it's not for everybody to define what success is for them, but I think success is loving the life that you designed for yourself.
Wow.
Whether it's the time, spending the perfect amount of time with your family. What's your number? Like how much time do you want to spend? How much time do you want to spend with friends? What's on your vision board? That is success. The numbers in the bank account, like that's irrelevant. And there are so many people that we think are successful and they don't even have cash value.
Yeah, and
they have a lot of buildings that have a lot of mortgages on it.
And I want to say that because most people listening to this are going to be like, yeah, it's easy to say when you made it. But my answer to them is go try to make it.
Right.
Go look a little bit. You have to get hurt to learn, right? We have to get hurt in relationships to know what good relationships feel like. We have to get burnt in business to know what good business feels like. So if you're doubting what success is and you think that success is on an outer experience, go and look for it. Go get burnt a little bit. See how that lands for you. And then you'll come back to real success, which is enjoying your life for real.
Right, yeah, because when we moved the goalpost and we wanted more, went from 30 to 100 employees, and then we moved it again. Yeah. That was very painful. Suddenly we feel very unsuccessful because it means taking bigger risk, right?
Absolutely.
So it really what success is not that.
Right.
And to the people that have a hard time being successful, it's because somebody's voice inside of them is still holding them back. Wow. It's somebody told them when they were 7 and 8, you can't talk, you can't be loud, you don't matter, you can't be successful. Who are you to say this? Right. Who are you to go? Who are you not? Go to the mirror, find out whose voice it is. If
Wow.
it's your parents, your teachers, and give it back to them. Tell them, this is your voice. This is your story. I'm sorry that you feel this way. I'm going to reclaim myself.
Absolutely. Wow. I'm going to finish with that because that's so powerful. Giving back that voice, and especially when it comes to shame,
Yes.
I think that that's super powerful. And sometimes we have these conversations on my WhatsApp status regarding what's right and what's wrong and whose voice. And everybody's talking about it, like what's special, whether it's tefillin or Shabbos and all these things. And I tell these people, create a voice for yourself.
Yeah.
Start doing your Yiddishkeit based on what you feel valued in. Because as long as you keep the Shabbos that you were forced on, or you do tefillin because your mashgiach and yeshiva told you to, or you're doing anything based on coming from a wrong place, and as long as you do it, it's not going to feel right.
I think we can have a whole nother podcast talking about growing up in a done-for-you society. It's made to order. It's ready delivered. And what we miss is a very important part in growing up, and which is called self-actualization. It's one of the ego states that every normal person has to go through, is finding themselves. And we don't get to find ourselves because everything is done for us. And I think that the yeshia in our generation is going to be for everybody to ask themselves, what do I think is true? What's my truth?
Absolutely. I often say there's so many different, even the Gemara teaches us to think two ways about everything. And there's so many different halachas and shittas. Look how, for us Hasidim, we're frim with our Burdan Payas, right? We all have a Burdan Payas. The Litvische, he thinks he's more from, and he doesn't go with the Burdan Payas. For them, their minig is to not. Everything literally has two ways, and how do we know what's truth or not? And the answer is, like you said, to follow our hearts. That's the most truth it's ever gonna get.
More than our hearts, you can go and look in the Torah and say, okay, what's Torah mamish?
Right.
What was all the added things? By the way, what is culture? We've added so much to our Torah. My rabbi, Rabbi Shmuel Gluck from Arevim, I asked him this question a few years ago when I was resentful about, like, I have to do so much. I have to prepare for Shabbos, clean up for Shabbos, and then the husbands are in Shil and they're kiddishing. And he said, since when is Kiddush Yiddishkeit?
Wow.
We added on culture and we call it Yiddishkeit.
Right.
And that's the layers that have to come off.
Absolutely. And we have today so many that we call manhugam that became so much part of society.
Right.
And I don't think people should value a minhig, but if it's something that stresses you out or it's too difficult for you, it's too difficult for you to stay in Shiel for 15 minutes after davening and say Tehillim, let's say, okay, well, that's a minhag.
Right.
I grew up in Skver, and for many, many years I said Tehillim every Friday morning, every Shabbos morning. It took me an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I said it. And that's very nice. But if I don't say it today's days, it doesn't mean that I'm blessed.
Exactly.
It was a minhag.
Right.
So I think people have to find truth with knowing what's right, what's being a good human, what's being good to yourself, what does forgiveness to oneself mean,
Right.
what does living a happy, good life that's fulfilling to you mean, what does giving up all that shame and resentment that you have towards so many people, what does giving up all those voices mean, that your father or mother making you feel guilty, or a rabbi or a teacher or whatever, or a society or a kahila, whatever it is, and live your life to the fullest.
Yeah, because if you live in shame, you're living a dual life. You're doing double time. It's like your jail time doubled, because one
Absolutely.
is shame and one is your true life, and they're fighting.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I think the scariest thing is getting to the end of it all,
yeah,
the 120, and say, I was just a follower.
right.
To me, it saddens me when I see old people and they tell me, 60 jaar arbeid ik in de grocery, like something like that. 60 years I've been doing the same job. And
I wanna challenge you to see that, and you see, this is where self-focused visionary comes in. That's okay for them. It doesn't work for you. Some people, we need followers.
Right.
Some people need that stability. Some people are happy with that consistency. It does not work for you.
Absolutely.
And this is like, if visionaries would realize that because they like something, it doesn't mean that the whole world has to like it, then you honor other people for who they are.
right. Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
for
I
you
agree.
it's sad if you would work 60 years in one
So
place.
that's in business, but I think life is similar to that. If you haven't visited places, if you haven't done what you're really passionate about, and you get to the end of it and you say, "Yeah, I was just a follower," I still think I don't think that that's right.
90%
For
of the
anybody.
world
Lives
lives
that
like
way.
that.
I know.
And it's not wrong. It's
Yeah.
you were chosen
Yeah.
to make a big difference, and
Yeah.
you're from the 10%.
I'm sure you heard of Bob Proctor. He said most people tippy-toe through life hoping to make it safe to death.
Yeah.
I think that that's very, very sad. Even for one that's not a visionary or a CEO.
I don't think it's sad.
Like, okay, well, I'm glad we have one thing that we can disagree on.
I don't think it's sad because the world needs that. It's like, imagine if everybody would decide that they're a Rebbe or they are the president.
Yeah.
Everybody would make Shabbos Fazich,
Right.
you know?
Right. Well, I feel like they should, even if they choose to work a position or to not own a company or to be a follower, there should be some uniquenesses to you.
I think
Don't
there should be an
just be a
active
follower.
choice.
Yeah.
I think every day that you wake up, like as a chussid, make an active choice and say, for today, I choose to be a Satmaris created to follow this
Right.
Rebbe. You know, like,
But they
let
don't.
it be an act.
But most
they
people don't.
No,
They're
they
acting out of fear.
and they live half asleep.
It's fair. I learned in Skver, you're not allowed to leave the shtetl.
Right.
I mean, it's
My mother comes from Skve.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. So and it's okay for that community. It's beautiful, but that's not conscious living.
So what happens when you leave? They scapegoat you.
Then you stay there. You can stay.
No, but
outside.
they all point their fingers at you.
Yeah.
Because it looks bad at them, and that is scapegoating.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think Yiddishkeit is moving in the right direction. That's my personal opinion,
I agree with you.
and I'm happy that I have a shofar.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Guys, please make sure to like this episode, share it with a friend that can enjoy it, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. I love hearing the feedback, and it really means a lot to me. Also, if you want to join the conversation, the link to my WhatsApp is in the description where you can sign up, you can get the updates, or you can message me if you want. And you can follow me on Instagram, on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.